you've done so much in the health industry, obviously with your research and commitment to what you're doing. Why Isagenix, Paul? What brought you to Isagenix, and how did that come about? Why was that a firm decision for you?
I got a random email from a scientist from Isagenix saying he had just read my latest publication in Obesity Journal, and I had no idea who the company was. And so he said, he'd love to have a reprint. And so I sent him the reprint right from my desk right then over email. And he responded back, saying, hey, thanks for the quick response. I'll read this with pleasure and would love to stay in touch. I said, absolutely. And so one thing led to the next. I did a little due diligence on my own. I was curious. He kind of piqued my interest about, who was this scientist, first of all, but, who was Isagenix? And I kind of just dove into it. Yeah, it's really an interesting story, but I was intrigued. They had just published some research out of University of Illinois, Chicago, with a leading scientist, Krista Verity. And I thought, wow, if she's going to align herself with a nutrition health company, there's got to be something unique about it. And wow, I was really blown away the further and further I went along on the journey with Isagenix, given their integrity, their reputation, their commitment to highest quality health and nutrition products on the planet. So yeah, it was a cool beginning for sure.
And with the research side of things, Paul, like I know that a lot of people like to cite research and they like to say, well, look, this is a really well-researched supplement. But what is the difference with Isagenix and how they go about being able to carry out the studies that they use? Because a lot of different companies, they kind of piggyback onto the different studies that might have been done by certain elements within their supplements, which then is a bit different to how Isagenix goes about it, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think we have some slides that have been popping up, and for me, which is great. For me, they had a history behind them when I came on, and this was back in 2013. Transitioning into 2014. So when I started to do a little digging on the company, one of the originators and founders of the company was John Anderson, and he was well known in the industry of nutritional formulations. He was nicknamed the Mineral Man, and he was a pioneer. He was a guy who really committed himself to the highest level of product formulation, and to know that he was part of this innovation of the start, literally the genesis of Isagenix. I was intrigued, and so to get at your question, he wasn't just picking and choosing random ingredients and formulations to put together. I mean, there was literally decades of thought that he put into it, and trial and error that he had experienced. He had, by the time he started with Isagenix, he had over 2,300 products that he had created. So that's incredible. And many of them were really grounded in human clinical trial research. And so to really get at the essence of your question, starting with John Anderson, with his formulations, and what Isagenix did from the beginning was always wanting to test the efficacy, how well the products worked on real living humans. And that's really rare, Lox, because we know that, as you said, lots of companies do what is called borrowed science. They know that there's an ingredient out there that's been tested maybe in mice or a cell line or in primates or, some other model on an acute basis or, just a very acute challenge, we call it. And what Isagenix was committed to was doing interventional research. Literally, they were doing clinical trial intervention research. And that's very unique, very rare, because it's super time intensive. It's super resource intensive in terms of financial, monetary support that you need. And then in terms of the personnel that need to be available with experience to conduct the studies, and then the research study participants themselves. So that they didn't jump into this at a low level of entry. Isagenix came on at the highest level of scientific integrity. And that's what really, for me, jumped out as something unique. They weren't playing small ball, as we say. They were playing big ball, and they really wanted to test these products on a whole organism level of a out in the wild human, doing an intervention type study to see how they worked. And so that's what, to answer your question directly, that's what really jumped out at me. And that's that won me over.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, isn't it, Paul, when you consider when, say, an outside consumer is asking, hey, does this have research attached to it? And if the answer is yes, and the company themselves have organized the research, quite often certain people within the industry will turn around and go, oh, well, that's because they did their own research. And obviously they've lent into, being able to affect those numbers because they've motivated their own study. How is it that Isagenix gets around that? How is it that, I mean, there's no one else is going to go out there and spend the hundreds of $1,000s, if not millions of dollars, to be able to get that specific research done. But when you do, allocate those funds to do that, you're still faced with the adversity of people thinking that, okay, somehow those numbers have been changed or affected by the fact that you funded it. How is it Isagenix is there?
Yeah, no, this is great. Lox, listen, first of all, this is a treat, literally a treat to have you on with me right now, because just the way that you present this, I think is so effective. So yeah, I really appreciate that comment. And you're exactly right. People have legitimate concerns and should be able to voice exactly what you're describing. And here's why. So much of the supplement nutrition industry, it has been tainted, it's been polluted because companies have come on with what they call human clinical trial research, and they've done an in-house, meaning they've done the study from within the confines, literally, of the physical building of where they're putting these supplements together with their own employees that they have direct control over. And so many of them publish what is called in-house or even pilot research data. And they use that, they extrapolate it to suggest that this is a claim that they have evidence that it works. And that's not legitimate. That doesn't fly in the scientific community. And to be perfectly honest with you, there's always some degree, as small as it is in most cases, of bias that there might be in terms of what the researchers are bringing to the table, what the study participants are bringing to the table, what the funding agency is bringing to the table. So I'm not going to, sit here in front of you and the others and claim that, there's no such thing. However, what we do know is that there's different layers of scrutiny and oversight that goes into highly validated and reliable and credible, scientifically credible and ethically conducted research. There's vast differences. And so your question is a good one. How is it that here you have the funding coming from the company that is manufacturing and producing and supplying the nutritional supplements, and then it's being published? Now, at the time, I was an independent researcher. I still am. I still have my position at the university level. I still have funding from other health and wellness nutrition companies to do research. So I'm working with one right now, in fact. So I maintain an objective basis, but it's beyond that. And so to answer your question, which is a really good one, the different layers of scrutiny, the different layers of ethical standards and criteria and oversight, independent third-party oversight that need to take place for a study to be published in a high-impact scientific journal, and this is what this slide in front of you is showing, takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of checks and balances. And so just have people have a degree of confidence, which I think is really important, knowing that this research has been scrutinized, it's been analyzed, it's been critiqued, it's had to meet the high level standards of what we have among all scientific research. We hold nothing back when we do this research. It's of the highest quality. These research studies, as you see in front of you, are published in some of the premier science journals in the world. And I like this slide because it kind of shows you that among the scientific community, there's a rating system. It's called the impact factor, and it's published by the I know it as the ISI. It's the Science Institute, International Science Institute. I think that's what it stands for, but it's something close to that. And it's a standard that's set among all the scientific journals. And an average of a human clinical trial in the nutrition science world is roughly a 3. So if you go back and you look at an average standard of peer-reviewed published research, it can vary up to 20 is super high, but it can be in the 1s, the 2s. Most of them are somewhere hovering around the 3s. Some get into the 4s. What I can say with a great deal of confidence, because I've analyzed the data and published many of these peer-reviewed publications, Isagenix has a 5.8 as an average. Now that's considered very, very good. That's an impact score that would hold its weight among some of the finest journals. So that's really important. And the reason for, just to finish up on this, is the study and the research is not done in a silo. It's not done in a vacuum. It's not done without any oversight of independent reviewers and experts at every level, from the genesis of the original idea to the oversight of the governing university who's allowing the study to take place there, to the international, we have an institutional review board at each of these universities, but then there is a much larger governing body that is world governed to conduct scientific research. And you have to pass the standards in order to conduct that research. So yeah, the commitment is massive. There's no guarantee. When I went into partnership with Isagenix, one of the kind of regulations or rules that I had was that they couldn't deny me to publish the research, depending upon what I found. And I thought that was really revealing. In fact, they had no interest in doing that when I raised that concern with them. I'll never forget it. Jim and Kathy Coover at the time, who founded the company with John Anderson, who are remarkable pioneers themselves. So this company is really grounded in pioneering visionaries in the world of health and wellness. I'll never forget it. They responded to me by saying, "We want nothing to do with what you find. You're the expert. What you find is what you find, and that's worthy of publishing." So yeah, that spoke a lot to me.
And that's so rare, isn't it? And particularly in an industry where there's so many claims, and it would seem that there's so many different options out there, but there are very few options really when you get down into the nitty gritty, and you realize that there's not a lot of companies that go to as much effort to get that scientific reinforcement with that the fact that their products actually work,
That's right.
and continual commitment that as well too, by having a team of experts that are committed to being able to find out, is there a way to improve this, and that continual improvement of the products, which I've seen over this. Both you and I, we've been into the company now we worked out for 12 years. That the commitment from John Anderson, I remember in the beginning, was that we don't want to change or alter the products. That was really important to him, because so much of the work that he had done with other products and the formulations that he had put together, for some of those companies, they may have actually done really well, but then when the company starts doing well and selling a lot of that product, they might want to cut costs by taking out certain ingredients to then suggest, okay, well, this is the same product, but now I've being able to pull back on certain ingredients. If anything, what we've seen with Isagenix is we've gone the other way. We've looked to improve upon those ingredients and enhance the product that was already a great and well proven product. And for me, I think that's like Nutrifusion, for instance, is an example with how we've been able to improve upon the isolene shake, for instance, with having all of those active, enzymes, vitamins, and minerals available in the isolene shake that was already a really well proven supplement and product, right?
Correct. Yeah, really good point. Yeah, it is. It's been a forward-thinking innovation. So if I had to describe Isagenix in the way that they approach their commitment, is exactly what you described. It's a forward-thinking, visionary a mindset of innovation. And so you're exactly right. Yeah, they're moving forward by innovating and improving upon with the whole blend now shakes, exactly, from the whole food sources. That's second to none. It's of the highest quality. And that's what's kept me along for the ride, and I'm sure you as well. And as you can see, kind of their foundational system. And that's one other thing, Lox, that I think is really important to point out. I know so often we're so tempted to buy into the magic bullet, we call it, right? The magic pill, the one size fits all approach to optimizing our health. And our bodies, we're a multi-system organism. We did try to practice medicine, at least here in North America, from a very mechanistic silo approach, right? You have a heart condition, we just look at your cardiovascular system. You have a metabolic dysfunction, we just look at your metabolic endocrine system. You have the list goes on, urinary. And what we now know is that that's not how the body operates. These things are all interconnected at a very, very high level of sophistication and intricacy. And so it's really worth noting that what has impressed me beyond all measure with Isagenix is that they've taken this systems approach. It's why they have the 30-day system, 30-day reset. And many of the products are designed and formulated from the earth. Going back to John Anderson again, he was the mineral man. He would literally climb up into these mountains and far reaches of the world and get on his hands and knees and get into the earth. And that's how our bodies thrive. When we're really taking things from their most natural form, their natural state, and when they interact with all of the different cells of the body. So yeah, that systems approach of healing and allowing the body to function at its highest is carried over into the nutritional formulations Isagenix has designed. So yeah, it's pretty cool.